Welcome to ACCI's podcast, a space where we discuss how a movement of Australian Christians is working to transform communities and nations one life at a time.
Well, hello, my name's Kat Yassi, and thank you for joining this podcast today. I'm the executive pastor at Faith Christian Church in Melbourne, Australia. And so, wherever you're joining us, it's great to have you here. And I'm joined with another Katrina Gliddon, who's the founder of Mother's Heart based in Cambodia. And today we are going to be talking about sustainability for change. Welcome, Katrina.
Thank you for having me.
Well, we're going to get right into it and love to hear a little bit about your story, Katrina, how you ended up founding Mother's Heart.
Well, in 2008, my husband and our three small children went to Cambodia, but we felt a call a long time before that. So we had a lot of years of preparation. So we landed in Cambodia in 2008 on the 1st of April, April Fool's Day. So that was, we have a laugh about that now. And so we started an NGO in 2010 called Mother's Heart. And that was in response to the lack of services to help women and girls that are faced with the crisis pregnancy. So we did that in 2010, and we now have an office in Battambang and Phnom Penh. We're a local NGO working alongside girls and women who are faced with the crisis pregnancy. They face a lot of stigma and shame and often rejected by their families and the wider social network, and they're left with no emotional or economical support at this real crucial time. And many of our girls and women are from extremely vulnerable backgrounds that, they're pregnant because of gender-based violence, or they've been abandoned, or they have severe disabilities. So extremely vulnerable girls, and we just have the privilege of being able to walk alongside them. We have an amazing local team on the ground that carry the vision and mission and the passion of Mother's Heart, and an amazing board of directors that help govern and support the team on the ground. And we just have the privilege of working with them and seeing what the amazing work that they're doing in our community in Cambodia.
Yeah, that's great. And doing an incredible job in the nation of Cambodia. I'd love to just talk with you, Katrina, about how, and you've given us a great, summary of a lot of years of development, how you went from feeling a call to missions, and then actually landing in Cambodia and then establishing Mother's Heart. But I'd love to talk to you about how did you go from the moment when you landed in Cambodia and where you saw the problem and you began to address it? Because perhaps for some of us, we can relate to, even in our local communities where we're placed, we might notice a problem, but how do we go to then addressing it in an effective way?
Sure. It was never our intention or even an idea that we were going to go to Cambodia and start a crisis pregnancy service. It's probably far away from what we thought we would be doing. We just really felt a call of God and just really wanted to use our skills and just let the Cambodian people know just how much God loved them, and what in whatever form that would take. So when we landed, we worked with other NGOs and for about 2 years and studied the language. So that took up a lot of our time, but it also gave us 2 years to really get settled in Cambodia and see the needs, because there's so many needs. So many justice issues, so much that you can be involved in, and they're all great and good things. But we knew that there was something in particular that God had for us, but we just didn't know what. And so it was around about the time we had a helper come and work in our home for a while, and she was a true orphan. Both her parents had passed away and had spent her life growing up in an orphanage, and she became pregnant, and so now she was an orphan and a single mum, a single woman that was pregnant. Her partner had abandoned her because he had another family. And so, yeah, so she had nobody. And so we became her family and we helped support her through her pregnancy and delivery. And we witnessed the barriers she faced, the discrimination and the shame that she faced being a single mum in Cambodia. And this really began to start questions in my mind. And the fact that she didn't know how she got pregnant, just all these questions that were really in our minds were how many other women in Cambodia are in the same situation as her? What are the services out there? So she was really the catalyst for us to see that there was these huge barriers and discrimination and lack of services to support her, and we had to do it. So I began talking with other people, seeing what they knew about crisis pregnancy in Cambodia. And I was given some good advice from some people on the ground there, and they said, do a literature review. So I looked at all the literature. What was contraception use in Cambodia? What were the abortion rates? How many women have crisis pregnancies? And so I did research, a literature review, and found out that there was no stats on crisis pregnancy, that contraception use was low. The main form of contraception was abortion, and that was 89% of those abortions were backyard abortions, so unsafe, and that the 21% of them, yeah, like unsafe abortions was just huge, and women were dying. 21% of the maternal death rate was from attributed abortion injuries. And then, so it was just really alarming. And then we interviewed women that were sexually active, and every one of them that had been pregnant had had one or more abortions. And I asked them, did you have any choices? What sort of choices did you have as a single woman when you were pregnant? And they said, we had no choices. We don't have any support or help. And they said, we would have had to abandon our babies, sell our babies, put them in an orphanage. They said there wasn't another outcome for us but to have an abortion. And so it was from that we designed a concept paper and a strategic plan, and looked at starting a pilot program in 2010. So it was about 1 year of research and interviews, and really looking at where the gaps were. There was no government department looking at crisis pregnancy. It was non-existent as far as they were concerned, and there was no other NGO in the whole of Cambodia working in this domain. And we thought, oh, we'll come alongside another organisation, support them, empower them, but there wasn't anybody, and that led us to think, well, this is a huge gap, and maybe this is really our purpose, why God has opened our eyes to these issues, and wants us to address them.
And we spoke yesterday a little bit, you and I, about the journey that you went on from recognizing the problem, which really kind of was on your doorstep when you personally witnessed a girl in
Yeah.
crisis,
Yeah.
and how you went from that really to researching and figuring out the scope of the problem. And you spoke about some of the barriers that the women faced. Just
Mm.
speak to us about how long that process was from when you first identified this potentially is not just a problem for someone we know, but this is a problem more broadly for women
Mm.
and young girls. How
Yeah.
long did it take for you to gather that research and to work out what some of those barriers were?
Well, it took over a year. I had two other lovely Cambodians. One was my language teacher, and one was my daughter's kindy teacher, who were also very passionate. My friend had lost her sister from an unsafe abortion, so it was really high on her agenda to find solutions for women. So it took a year. And then, you have to convince people that your concept is a feasible concept and is needed. Like, you might come up with an idea, but you have to prove that this what your strategic plan, how you think these women can be helped, is feasible. So, it's so important to do community assessment, because sometimes, we come in as expats and think we know what people need, but really it's what the community thinks they need. That's the most important thing. So doing those lit reviews and doing those interviews, and further along, we've done, more community assessments and situation analysis, and really got the whole community involved in the decision making process. Because if you get the community saying what they need, and in the decision making process, you have them for life, you have them on board, you have them taking ownership. So, that groundwork is never wasted. And so the women basically said, we wished we had somewhere we could go where there was other choices that we could make when we were pregnant. So it took, it took a year. We were there for 2 years, and then a year of research. A year in that 2 years researching while working with other NGOs. So yeah, it took about 2 years all up.
Yeah. And you spoke earlier about the barriers, because there's more than one barrier that these women face when they find themselves in this situation. I'd love for you to just spend a bit more time talking about what some of those barriers are. We might think perhaps we have an idea about some of them. You alluded to even education about contraception and safe practices as a big one.
Yeah, just, gender inequality is the main one. They say men are like gold and women are like white silk. So the gold can drop in the mud and you can wipe it and it's clean again, but white silk, once it's in the mud, never really is white again. And so even in Cambodia, when a woman, is pregnant because of rape or, gender-based violence, she still holds the whole responsibility of that pregnancy. So, gender inequality is high up there. Access to free healthcare, that's better now. There's a poor card, but there's no access to free healthcare. There's no free housing. There's no social services like we have here in Australia. So for a single mum, if she can't work, she can't eat, she can't provide shelter, she doesn't know about her anatomy. I mean, I remember I had a 39-year-old woman said, I thought I only got pregnant if I loved someone. I didn't love him, and I just said, oh my God, a 39-year-old not knowing that, the process of her reproductive system and a man's reproductive, and not understanding the process of how pregnancy comes to pass. And so that was huge. Those barriers to even understanding how pregnancy occurs. If you don't know how pregnancy occurs, you can't stop it from occurring. And then also many girls, have low education. Many of our young girls in our program, are illiterate, had to leave school early because of caring roles. If there's a caring role in the family, it's going to be placed on a girl. If one person can only be paid for education, it'll be the boy, not the girl. They go into early labor, they get trafficked, they get sold as brides, they look after other people's children, they go to Malaysia. There's so many barriers for education amongst young girls and women as well.
Yeah. And so knowing those barriers, Katrina, how did you go about making and having a model of care that was sustainable? Because I know that you're really passionate about sustainable change, not just coming in and putting a band-aid on a problem, but that one that will outlast whether you stay in the nation or not.
That's right. I mean, I think many, many years ago, I attended a course. It was International Health and Development by Anthony Radford, and he was a man before his time, and he was a missionary, and he said, never do anything in a country that the locals can't sustain and take on themselves. And I thought, whatever we do, we have to make sure that it's culturally acceptable, that it's sustainable, and that it has ownership, because we are there to work ourselves out of a job. So that was always at the back of my mind, that whatever we whatever we do must be sustainable and must have local ownership in the end. So, we started very simply. What we wanted to do was, empower women and girls, equip them and educate them. And so, when we started, you have to meet the basic needs of a woman, that's in crisis. You have to, these women have never been able to, make their own decisions. So our first step was counselling. Here you are with the crisis pregnancy, here are your choices. Now it's your turn for the first time in your life to make a decision. Their first human autonomy, they're in the decision making process. So the first step is, empowerment, so they make the best decision for themselves and for the future of their baby. And, then you have to meet the basic needs of, shelter, healthcare, safe accommodation, legal services. Once you have them safe and they are secure, then you can work on the more complex needs of, sexual reproductive health rights. What does that mean for them? Mother skills, education along knowledge of their bodies. And also the most important thing we found is working with communities and government. You got to work on the ground with the local government and the local services. Because if you want women to be able to access healthcare in the future, then you've got to be using the local services so they learn how to navigate those. If you want those women to be able to move back into their communities and be safe, you've got to work with their local chief. If you want them to be reconciled and reintegrated back into their family that's rejected them, then you've got to be working with their families for reconciliation. These are long-term sustainable things. For a single woman to be able to be in a community with the support of the family, this is sustainable for a single mum's future and will build on her success as a single mum. So very much working with the local government, local services, with family, the whole empowerment. And, you work with community and government, you're building strong partnerships and relationships that they will, that we will have a collective focus on these issues that our women face. Otherwise, we're just doing it alone. So, building sustainable partnerships and relationships are extremely important for sustainability. We usually talk about sustainability and we think financial. And to be honest, what social service in our country is sustainable? We, the people, the taxpayers, are paying for that. It's not by making bracelets that we get our social services. So, when you talk about financial stability in a country where the tax system is underdeveloped, that's not going to happen for a long time. And it also doesn't negate the wealthy giving to the poor. That's part of why we have wealth. It's not to be kept, it's to help those that don't. So we look at ways that sustainability can take place as a project and for our women. And as a project, it means local ownership. You have local people working, a local board. They will have homegrown vision and initiative that's sustainable. They will build resilience when they have to make hard decisions, which they had to do in the last year. And they will take on the passion and they will drive the organisation. So for local ownership is really the way a project can become sustainable. For our beneficiaries, it's, having knowledge, sexual reproductive health rights that will give them knowledge to be able to make decisions for their future. And one that we're really wanting to focus on is women's economic empowerment. That helps them to be able to gain manageable jobs, have agency, in the markets, the job markets, and the economy, which they don't have now. Women are very limited in what jobs they can do, and things like women's co-ops and peer groups and things like that can support them through the lifespan, will help them become sustainable. A woman that has a good job or good education, a family, like we work a lot with families because many of our young girls are children themselves. So they need their families to help them. So we set up families and small businesses, and so we're really wanting to focus more on that women's economic empowerment, because that sets them up for life and gives them skills that are transferable across the lifespan.
Yeah, I love those thoughts because you've addressed the sustainability of the women's economic future, sustainability in terms of community partnerships, and so that the broader community actually are engaged in the work, but also see the future in the work, and sustainability in the way that you actually approach the care that you deliver, the services that you provide as well. Yeah, so it's sustainability on multiple levels, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and like I'm learning all the time about sustainability. We don't have it. We don't have it all. We don't have it right. But I think, as long as we're always thinking about how we can move forward and become more sustainable. Like, I'm back here in Australia now. I am not involved in the day-to-day operations. I don't need to be. My team, my team is, strategic in finding new partners, strategic in getting poor cards so women have, can access health. They're the ones that are really strategic, and they're on the ground. They're combined. They know how to access all these services, and I just think it's just brilliant.
That's wonderful. Katrina, what's one thing that you would say, or you would say to yourself, your former self, if before you were heading to the mission field, what's one piece of advice that you could give? I imagine people listening, there might be some who are thinking and feeling that same call. What's something you've learned that you wish you knew before you went on the field?
Oh gosh, I started mission work at 21. So I was as green could be. I I think the main thing is that you have a call, because it sustains you through the ups and downs. Like, you hear about our success, but it's been tough. There's been the highs and there's been lows. And if you know that God has called you to do this, then at the end of the day, it's His responsibility to uphold you. So the call of God is extremely important, and godly wisdom, and also professional wisdom in the like we go out as professionals now. How do I do what I do that walks alongside the locals, and really, I'm glad I had that interaction with Anthony Radford many years ago, about how do we do missions or development work, working alongside the locals and empowering them and encouraging them to be better in themselves, and better for the community. You're looking at making life better for the community, for people. So I would say make sure you get godly counsel. Do the hard work, before you go. We had to do so much study, and I look back now and I think none of that was wasted. Um, get a good organisation that's going to support you while you're doing your work, because you're going to have lots of ups and downs, and you need that really, really, really good support from your organisation that you're with. Yeah.
Well, that's so wonderful. Those are some great thoughts to leave this conversation with. And I would encourage those who are listening, particularly if you feel that you are called to missions, that you can head to the ACC website, acci.org.au. And in addition to supporting wonderful field workers and projects such as Katrina and Mother's Heart, we also train and send field workers. And so if that's something that you feel called to do, you can head to our website. But you can also head to our website if you'd like to know more about Mother's Heart and support the work that is ongoing in Cambodia. Thank you so much, Katrina. It's been great to
Oh,
chat.
I love chatting with you. And just one other thing, we can use some interns too. So if you want to come and work for us for an internship, we'd love to have you as well.
Great, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bless you all.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of One Life at a Time. To play a part in making a difference, or to find out more about ACCI's impact across the globe, visit acci.org.au.